Trump's former fixer is now a convicted felon, and Michael Cohen is speaking out, trying to poke holes in the president's defense. Simply put, he is implicating the president in possible campaign finance violations, telling ABC News his former boss knew about payments made to Karen McDougal and Stormy Daniels and that he directed them.
Nothing at the Trump Organization was ever done unless it was run through Mr. Trump. He directed me to make the payments. He directed me to become involved in these matters.
Well, President Trump says he never told Michael Cohen to break the law. Now that is a change of tack. Previously, the president claimed he knew nothing about the payments.
What he did was all unrelated to me, except for the two campaign finance charges. They put those two charges on to embarrass me. They're not criminal charges.
Compounding all of this, NBC News reporting candidate Trump was in the room when Michael Cohen and David Pecker, who oversaw the National Enquirer, agreed on a plan to silence the women who alleged they had affairs with Donald Trump. And despite the fact that he is going to prison for 3 years, Michael Cohen says he is still willing to talk.
If they want me, I'm here, and I'm willing to answer whatever additional questions that they may have for me. But I will spend the rest of my life in order to fix the mistake that I made.
Glenn Kirshner, I'm going to start with you here. We heard a bit of what I think was the headline from that George Stephanopoulos interview, saying that everything was at the direction of Mr. Trump, as he put it. You listened to that interview. You looked at the transcript from the court proceedings when the sentencing took place. How important is that, Michael Cohen saying that? What does it mean for this going forward?
So, you know, the evidence just continues to mount, and it really does show, I would suggest beyond a reasonable doubt, that President Trump not only committed campaign finance felonies, but he committed another crime over and above that, and that is a conspiracy to violate the campaign laws. Why? Because he didn't do it alone. He did it together with others. It was an illegal agreement that they entered into to help Trump gain unfair advantage in the 2016 presidential election. So his co-conspirators are Michael Cohen, David Pecker, potentially Alan Weisselberg, the chief financial officer for the Trump Organization. So not to mention, inconsistent statements by a defendant are evidentiary gold. So when Trump says, I never had an affair with that woman, or if I did, I didn't make any payments, or if we did make payments, it was my lawyer who made the payments, but they were civil, they weren't, you know, you can walk in and present all of that to a jury. Now, whether the jury ends up 12 people in a jury box or the American people judging an impeachment hearing, you can present all of that to the jury, and I think a first-year law grad would win a conviction without breaking a sweat.
Stick with the lawyers here just for a moment. Chuck, I'm going to turn to you. Glenn's using the word conspiracy, and some say tread trepidatiously there. Don't use that word yet. Are you comfortable using that in light of what you've seen here, again, in the filings and in the transcript and in that interview with ABC News?
Well, so to give you a lawyer answer, David, if you agree with somebody to do something illegal, that's a conspiracy. That's specifically what Michael Cohen said happened, that he coordinated with and was directed by the President of the United States. So I actually don't know what else to call it. But here's the thing. You still need to prove that the President intentionally violated the law. That's the hardest part for prosecutors. Some of the stuff that Glenn was just talking about, the changing stories, right? Critical evidence. But yeah, it sounds, it smells, it seems like a conspiracy.
Quacks like a duck, it is a duck. Yeah.
If the jury is the Republican Senate, then the question becomes, will they impeach him? Because the House, we can debate, we can talk about, but it's led by Democrats now, Nancy Pelosi. Republican senators, if it comes to impeachment, will there be enough? Was it 2/3, right? So the question was somewhat answered this week. If it's just what we know now, we heard a whole bunch of Republicans in Congress saying, I don't care. And the American people don't necessarily, at least Trump supporters, I should say, don't necessarily care about these types of financial, FEC crimes. I was arguing with this about my dad. He's like, that's a crime? Why should that be a crime? I mean, he doesn't like Trump, but, a lot of people are going to be party to that discussion. And so I think really that's the most important point. What would these Republican senators do? But we're just, I guess you guys would tell us, these are just the beginning. These are the appetizers from the prosecution.
Very quickly, let me just play a bit of sound. This is the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Chuck Grassley, responding to what we saw in court this week. Let's take a listen.
I get back to the fact that Cohen's a liar, so I can't draw any other conclusions, and I don't draw very many conclusions when somebody lies to Congress.
Chuck, I know you want to get in here.
Well, Cohen is a liar. He's a convicted liar. He's also an admitted liar. But prosecutors don't build cases on one liar's testimony. There's this thing called corroboration, and there seems to be quite a bit of it, right? So again, Glenn mentioned Mr. Weisselberg and Mr. Pecker. Lord knows who else might be in that room when they were discussing. But there might also be tapes. There's probably emails. There are likely documents. And there are probably people that these people talk to. And good prosecutors can always figure out a way to get that stuff into evidence. So you don't build a case on one person. You build it on many people and many pieces of corroborative evidence. That's how we do it.
Rita, I want to turn to you and just ask you sort of how things changed politically. Pete talking about the appetite among Republicans in Congress to deal with this, but this was a spectacle at a federal courthouse here in Manhattan. Michael Cohen putting a pin in this, closing this chapter, readying to head up to Otisville to go to prison if he gets his way. What changed politically as a result of this, as you see it?
Yeah, down in Washington, D.C., I would submit to you that not much changed. No, really, because it remains still tale of he said. And Michael Cohen's credibility has been low. It's been low for a long time. In the court of public opinion, this guy's a serial liar. I mean, this goes all the way back to the campaign when he said all the polls show Mr. Trump, right, winning. And so he is just somebody that I think is seen as somebody who's not credible, and senators and congressmen and women alike are just saying this is fine. Put a pin in it. It's over. But this doesn't really move the needle in terms of getting the president, Well,
that's the question, just to submit this for conversation. The question is, we're talking right now about a crime. You guys, the legal experts, explain this to us. But the crime is paying a woman, in this case, an actress, to be quiet. That's it. So this is the crime. This is what they've got him on. That's what we're hearing, and that right now I think is convincing. You know that has a lot. To the
American people, that's too inside baseball. They don't
these guys
see that
know.
as a crime.
There's a lot more coming, right?
But it's paying a woman to get unfair advantage in a presidential election. That's depriving the American people of the full value of their vote. That's why us pinhead lawyers, I'm sorry, Chuck, prosecutors, thank you. You know, we look at this and we think this is really consequential. And all due respect, it's really not a he said, it's a they said it together on a tape. And they're both conspiring.
Well, I want to
jump in.
Rina, I want to ask you about something that Pete brought up. That is, you have a lot of Republicans saying, Rudy Giuliani, the president's lawyer, saying, look, this is a small thing. What politician hasn't had to deal with this?
Yeah, he's doing a great job.
Fair enough. To the FTC. Well, he's in Bahrain. Anyways, you have that on one end of the spectrum, and then you have op-eds by George Conway, Neil Katyal, and Trevor Potter, election lawyers, saying, this is hugely consequential because this could have impacted the turnout, the result of the election in 2016.
Well,
why isn't that more resonant with folks on both sides?
We principled conservatives tried, and look at where that got us. I mean, essentially the Never Trump movement, they keep telling us that we're dead, but it's not true. These are great arguments that get to the root of the problem, that they are on a tape essentially conspiring. But listen, this all goes back to the political will to get this man, and Republicans don't have it, and I fear that they won't have it for a while, because even evangelicals overwhelmingly gave their vote to a man who's an adulterer, an admitted adulterer, somebody's on his third marriage. They are fine with him paying off an adult film star
accused of sexually assaulting numerous women. But you're talking, these guys are talking about crimes, and that's what we should be talking about. Legal experts. Yes, Americans talk about feelings. Well, I don't think it should be a crime, or how bad is it? Orrin Hatch, a senator who just retired, said, you know what, basically, I don't care. It was a long time ago. Obviously, they didn't treat Clinton that way, but consistent.
Well, he walked it back, by the way. I just want to say that Senator Hatch walked back his comments.
I mean, he should walk back to his whole career.
Chuck, I want to ask you about another argument that's being made here by the president and his lawyers. That is, this isn't his fault. He entrusted his legal strategy to Michael Cohen. Michael Cohen made the mistakes. Why should he be responsible? In other words, don't blame me, blame the lawyer. Well, how much salience does that have when you look at the legal side of things?
Yeah, so we hear that quite often. If that's his defense, I would say give it a shot. It's called an advice of counsel defense. There's a couple of problems with it. Number one, as Glenn pointed out earlier, the story keeps changing. If on the first time out of the box he had said, whoa, you know, hold on, this is what my lawyer told me to do, that might ring true. But what he actually said was, I have no idea what you're talking about. This never happened. Nothing to see here. Second thing, I just think this is an important distinction, David, between this, it's only a civil infraction, or, as Glenn and I would say, it's a crime. Yeah. Think about taxes. If you make a mistake on your taxes, that's not a crime, okay? That's a mistake. You might owe money, you might be audited, you might have to pay a fine, but that's handled civilly. If for 7 years running, okay, you hide foreign bank accounts, you omit income, you do a whole bunch of things that we would say are intentional indicia of tax fraud, that's a crime. It's the same thing here. Mistakes are not